Thank you. Finally, are there any differences between evangelizing to men and evangelizing to women in the U.S. today? And what do you think is the best way to reach out to Western women in order to preach the gospel to them, especially if they have a feminist mindset?
Yeah, I sort of referenced that there in terms of the different the things that men and women might be more inclined to accept. I think I don't think we have a problem. See, this is something that I've seen. Again, when you've lived long, you see things being done over and over again, and you see the consequences of it. And there was a lot of talk in the '80s about the gender gap, electoral talk about how, oh, gee, you've got to please women in order to be elected. And of course, what it meant was more and more emphasis on what pleases women, but that resulted in less and less interest from men. And what we've seen politically has been that men have gotten fed up with that. And this is a large part of the comeback under Trump and previous more conservative politicians. And so we don't want to repeat the fall of worrying so much about losing women that we turn off men. The military has that problem too, because since they're forced to recruit women and they have to work at recruiting women, but when you aim at recruiting women, you are in fact turning off a lot of men. You don't want to do that. You're just repeating the fall when you do that. You're having you're appealing to women, and then you're having the men follow. You're expecting the men follow the women, and they won't do it. And so what we need to do is do what we are: preach what we believe, live the traditional way, maintaining our tradition with its distinction of male and female, which will be very much more attractive to men and also more attractive to women, as women realizes this is actually a good place to be also. The tradition is, it's not all just about male and female by any means. And there's enough in the tradition that women, being smart, can see that there are great benefits to it. It's a great place to live, a great way to work, great way to live. And of course, we have our exemplars of femininity. We have the Theotokos right there. We have all those saints. In a church, traditionally decorated churches, the cathedral in which I serve in, the lower floor, the nave, and since the south wall is all male saints and the north wall is all female saints, and those are the sides that men and women would stand on. Generally, still do that. That's an ancient custom of men standing on one side and women on the other, and it reduces the distraction that comes from mingling together too much. But you have all of these female saints and you have all these male saints. There's a place for both men and women, and there's a clear distinction between the female saints and the male saints. As much as some might like to emphasize a sort of monastic ideal, even among monks, there's a difference. I've heard Metropolitan Jonah once remark on how different female monasteries are. His familiarity being with male monasteries, but then also having seen female monasteries. Well, of course, they're going to be different because women are different. And it's a different expression of the same humanity, the same image of God, but differently expressed. And women, I think sane women will recognize that, and they'll put up with it. But what we don't want to do is make a real play for women by downplaying the truth of the matter. You can only do that so long. The reason we're in this mess in some ways is because pastors have been so afraid of women that they will not give women the truth about certain things. They won't teach it. They'll just leave out that part about your turning shall be your husband and he shall rule over you. They'll leave that out. They'll water down the whole business of loving your wife and obeying your husband. They'll talk about respect. Of course, yes, respect. A woman is to respect her husband. Actually, the Greek word in that passage is phobeo, fear, and it doesn't mean fear in the sense of fear of physical harm or what. It means you should fear to displease him. It's a heightened matter of respect that is a lot more than simply treating somebody nicely. We talk about respecting somebody as just treating them fairly and nicely. Well, that's not what the woman's required. That's not all the woman's required to do towards her husband. And yet you'll have people who will just explain it in so weak terms that nothing's expected of the wife, nothing's expected of the woman. She's just gets off the hook, and you can't keep doing that. You have to admit that yes, there's a natural equality, a shared, a mutual, different but still mutual expressions of the archic and the Eucharistic, the self-giving, the thanksgiving. But then there's always the fall. There's still the fall, and there are things that come from the fall, and that means that we all have to be humble. We all have to accept our place in society. We all have to respect those over us, and for women, that means respecting men and the limits that come with that. You just cannot get over this, and it needs to be spoken of more often. But a lot of men are really afraid to do so. They're afraid to do that with women. I've found actually women are a lot when you are daring enough to say these things. A lot of women actually understand and go along, and then they're not nearly that difficult. But there will be some who've been just completely acculturated to the modern world, and they will have all those prejudices. Their imagination of the world is essentially feminist, and you won't get those. But that's something that you won't get them easily. But that's something that could come in time when they see that indeed there's a better way, and the better way is to show more respect for male and female and live as we've always lived.